Welcome to a special edition of Real Story. Over the last 12 months or so, we've investigated dozens of stories, and the question we're always being asked is, what happened next? Now we can tell you. Banks behaving badly, now the authorities step in. More cash and recruits for environmental health after our investigation.
It's the sort of response that really was beyond our wildest dreams.
It's official, some new roads are more dangerous.
These new road surfaces can be up to 40% more slippery than an ordinary surface.
After the tsunami, the family determined to make a difference. And Frank Gardner's remarkable return after being shot and left for dead.
I love doing this job, and fortunately, as my head isn't injured, I can still do it.
Real Story with Fiona Bruce.
It's something on all our minds at this time of year, money. And with the pressure to spend, we can find ourselves getting into serious debt. On Real Story, we discovered that some banks are far too willing to lend us extra cash, even when we can't afford to pay it back. But now it seems the industry is finally getting a wake-up call. Lloyds TSB is Britain's biggest lender. We first featured them in July 2004. We uncovered evidence that it was making an ass out of rules meant to govern the lending industry. In May, we told you about the Dickersons from Swansea. David suffers from mental illness and lives on benefits. Even so, Lloyds TSB gave him a series of loans totalling £100,000.
We can't afford to pay it back. We can pay the mortgage or we can't pay the loans. We can't pay anything, any of it is back.
And the Dickersons weren't alone. We got hold of an internal document which stated that 1 in 6 cases where a loan was granted by Lloyds TSB, it was doubtful that the customer could afford to pay it back. All banks have a duty enshrined in the banking code, not to lend customers more than they can afford. Lloyds TSB had already told us these kinds of things couldn't happen.
For the middle of last year onwards, you would find very different scenarios taking place so that these situations can't happen.
But this year, Real Story uncovered yet more cases of Lloyds giving people huge loans they just couldn't afford. Peter was recovering from lung cancer. He hadn't worked for 7 years and lived with his wife on £13,000 benefit a year. Despite this, they'd been lent a series of loans by Lloyds TSB which totaled over £100,000. He was so embarrassed by his debt that we agreed not to identify him and changed his name. How much money have you borrowed over how much time?
Since 2000, it's approaching £100,000.
So 100 grand
Yeah.
on an income of £1,000 a month.
Yeah.
And did the bank, Lloyds, ever say to you, how are you going to pay this kind of money back?
No.
On the income you've got?
No.
Lloyds also told Peter to take out payment protection insurance. This is an insurance policy which covers the monthly repayments if a customer suddenly can't pay through ill health or unemployment. But it wasn't ideal for someone like Peter. At the time you took out insurance, you were already ill,
Yeah.
which meant that you were not eligible.
Yeah.
You were unemployed,
Yeah.
which also meant that you weren't eligible.
Yeah.
Lloyds knew this,
Of course they did.
but they still gave you the insurance.
Yeah, because, I mean, as I said, all our money goes or went into that account.
But Lloyds TSB insists that the sale of the insurance was appropriate. They also say they've agreed an affordable repayment plan with Peter. We had a better result in the case of the Dickersons from Swansea. They'd also borrowed £100,000. We got hold of internal documents which said the bank would struggle to defend a claim of irresponsible lending.
Right. Tell us what's happened now.
They've offered to write off all the unsecured borrowing.
I felt that, everything was, my world was at an end, but now I feel much happier.
The Banking Code Standards Board, the body that regulates the industry, asked to see our leaked documents and promised to launch an investigation.
We would go through the disciplinary process and, if necessary, name them and shame them at the end of the day.
So what have they actually done? Well, the Banking Code Standards Board says it's made a series of recommendations to the banks, including Lloyds, about how they should lend to vulnerable customers. But they won't tell the public what those recommendations are, and the banks are still considering them. campaigners aren't satisfied. What has the Banking Code Standards Board done since our programme?
I think they've just been reviewing all the evidence. They've taken due recognition of the consumer concern about this. They've obviously reported back into the banks. We don't know what, because they don't tell us. We understand they're going to review the banking code, but again, we have absolutely no idea. The banks have not come out and said anything.
Are we ever going to find out?
I really don't know. There's a history of a lack of transparency with the banks and the banking code.
And why are they so secretive, the Banking Code Standards Board and the banks, about this? This is our money we're talking about, after all.
I think there's a lot of things they don't want to come out into public view. And I think the content of your programmes over the last 18 months has given them great concern.
Meanwhile, the Office of Fair Trading says it's now having informal talks with Lloyds TSB about whether staff follow the correct lending procedures. The OFT have also responded to a formal complaint brought by the Citizens Advice Bureau about payment protection insurance in general.
The Office of Fair Trading has said that they're going to do a study into how this market works and the problems in the market, which is what we asked them to do. So what we're hoping is they can look in great detail into what's going on. They'll look at the issues that we've raised as problems, and what we hope that will come out of that is some solutions that will make firms give a better product, a cheaper product, that better meets the needs of people who are just trying to insure themselves against the risk of falling into debt.
We've been talking about payment protection insurance on Real Story for 2 years now. Do you think our programmes have made a difference?
Yes, every bit helps. These problems have been going on for a long time, bubbling away in the background. If things like your programme and our complaint to the Office of Fair Trading can bring these things up into the light, then hopefully the problem will get dealt with and people will get a better deal from payment protection insurance that they're buying.
Most of us eat out these days, even if it's just for a takeaway sandwich or a burger, and we assume that food hygiene is properly policed. But following a major outbreak of the food bug E. coli, Real Story exposed a staffing crisis in environmental health departments across the UK. The village of Derry near Bargoed in South Wales. The school here was one of 42 across Wales affected by an outbreak of E. coli in September. Mason Jones was one of 161 people to fall ill.
He said, "Mum," he said, "I'm bleeding." And there was blood on the carpet. And I had to start using disposable napkins now at this time because Mason, I was changing him constantly.
Just 2 weeks after he first became ill, 5-year-old Mason died.
You shouldn't even have food poisoning in school these days. I mean, this should be such priority in the places that deal with school, with children's food, with any food nowadays. You'd think that it would be priority hygiene, and you would never think that...
Everything done stringently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ensure something like this never occurs.
Real Story wanted to investigate claims that there was a staffing crisis in environmental health, so we carried out our own survey of all Britain's local authorities. 2/3 of those who responded said they had staff shortages with 1 or more unfilled posts. And 1 in 5 said that due to staff shortages, they found it hard to meet requirements necessary to protect public health. Environmental health officers are responsible for making sure the food we eat is safe. The Chartered Institute of Environmental Health believed there were too few of them, putting public health at risk.
If environmental health departments continue to be underfunded, we will see, in my view, more outbreaks of food poisoning because there will be fewer and fewer officers to go around more and more premises, so consequently the risk will get greater.
Coventry, a town with 3,000 food businesses and an environmental health department with 2 unfilled posts. Here, 11 officers have to police every aspect of food safety in the town to prevent potential food poisoning outbreaks. This department is pushed to cope with the growing workload.
At the moment we've got a couple of vacancies that we're trying to recruit to. Our experience is that people very rarely read an advert these days and say, "Wow, that sounds really interesting, I want to go and work there." We placed an ad in the paper a little earlier this year. We just had 2 people who expressed an interest, and by the time we contacted them, they were no longer interested, so that was a failed recruitment exercise.
Hello, Chris Davis and John Sowell from Environmental Health. We're here to do a routine inspection.
just looking in here really to find out what the temperature of the fridges are. Obviously legally they need to be below 8 degrees, and these are running at sort of around about 7.
And do you have a cleaning schedule or rota, or do you just clean?
Every day we go along, we clean it. Sundays the main cleaning, we go through basically everything.
The officers find a couple of minor problems.
You can see where the seals are damaged though. Issues with broken seals, obviously that affects the way that holds temperature of the fridge.
After a full inspection, Chris and John are satisfied that this takeaway is making good progress and the standard of hygiene is good. In our Real Story survey of the country's environmental health departments, some reported that balancing increasing workload with fewer staff was detrimental to public health.
The inadequate number of posts is of huge concern to us.
The lack of staff poses a risk in relation to carrying out statutory duties.
Public health is low on the Council's agenda.
But after our programme, the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health reported an unexpected result. What kind of response did you have to our E. coli programme?
There was an enormous and immediate response. On a normal working day, we'd get about 25 hits on our careers website. After the programme, we got 2,500 the following day. Add to that the 350 emails and phone calls that we had in headquarters from people interested, and see that the response was very quick and very strong.
And these are all people interested in becoming environmental health officers?
That's right, all looking for ways to access the profession, either as undergraduates or from other professions and wanting to retrain.
So you must have been thrilled with that?
Oh, we were delighted. It's the sort of response that really was beyond our wildest dreams. After the programme, the Welsh Local Government Association found £100,000 for student training and work experience in Wales. And that's a huge amount of money between 22 local authorities and completely unexpected. So it's been a real bonus for student training.
Road safety is something that affects all of us. We hear a lot about speeding, drink driving, hit and run. But in June, Real Story uncovered a potential new danger, the very surface of the road itself. Sergeant Jim Allen is a collision investigator for Derbyshire Police. 4 years ago, he began to notice a problem with some new road surfaces.
Back in the summer of 2001, a colleague and I attended 2 separate incidents in North Derbyshire. We, as a matter of routine testing, performed skid tests at the scene. And we found that when we were skidding the police car over these road surfaces, we were skidding for further than we would have expected to do, and further than we'd become used to on older road surfaces.
The road surface didn't contribute to the particular accident Sergeant Allen investigated, but his tests showed that the new surface could be more slippery than the old one, and surprisingly, even when it was dry. The new roads are made with a mix of stone chippings within the tar, which is cheaper and quicker to lay than traditional surfaces.
Which means that all the stones have a coating of the binder material, which is oil-based. When you skid a car over that, one of the byproducts of friction is heat, and we believed that that heat was melting the binder, which was lubricating the patch between the tyre and the road, and that's what was extending the skidding distance.
The new surface is known as thin road surfacing, and the government plans to cover 60% of our main roads with it by 2010.
There's concern that after it's laid, it's actually more slippery than perhaps the surface you're replacing. And that is a very big issue for drivers, certainly. And so we need to really bottom this out, because at the moment, drivers, if they see a new surface, they assume it's perfectly good and far better than what was there.
The Transport Research Laboratory had previously tested the new surface when wet. When Real Story filmed there in June, it had finally begun testing its skid resistance when dry. Some people might think the TRL should have tested this surface when it was dry from the outset. Why wasn't that done?
When we were first researching these materials, we did not have the technology to do dry lot wheel skids. And the worst case is always the wet conditions. So we've always been studying the worst case. And the fact that there was the possibility that there might be a problem in dry conditions only came to light as the materials began to occur and be used in a more widespread manner.
Since the Real Story investigation, the Transport Research Laboratory has published its new research. It concludes that it can take up to 40% longer for a car to stop on newly laid thin road surfacing. It also concludes that this reduced skid resistance can last up to 18 months. These findings appear to support what Sergeant Allen and the AA have been saying all along. What was your response when you saw the research from the Transport Research Laboratory?
It confirmed our fears, really, that there is a problem with these new thin surfaces.
The report also recommends that slippery road signs should be put up to warn drivers when a surface is first laid.
I think the crucial issue for drivers is knowing that new roads can be slippery, perhaps slipperier than the old road they're replacing. So drivers need signage that tells them that the new road surface has to bed in for a certain length of time.
After our programmes about the earthquake in Pakistan, the hurricane in New Orleans and the Asian tsunami, many of you got in touch with us wanting to know how you could help. One family in particular struck a chord.
BBC Radio 4, the news at 6 o'clock on Sunday the 26th of December. A massive earthquake in the Indian Ocean has sent out surging waves which have lashed the coasts of Sri Lanka, Thailand, Bangladesh, India and the Indonesian islands.
2-year-old Ragnar Bang Eriksson from Norway was one of 50,000 children who died or went missing in the Boxing Day tsunami.
The water came banging on the front window and the windows exploded into the room. And I was holding Ragnar in my arms, and he had his blue swimming arms on him, and he started to cry and he said, "Daddy, I'm afraid." And the next moment we just busted through the concrete wall. I had to switch grip of Ragnar and he got away from me. So the last thing I saw of him was him floating away.
3 months after the tragedy, Ragnar was still missing, and his parents, Anders and Lise, returned to Thailand. They couldn't face life at home without Ragnar.
When we left Phuket, it felt like as if we left Ragnar here. And when we came home, it was pretty overwhelming. We left our home for 1 month to go here for a vacation. And when we came home, half family with all the clothes and toys of Ragnar, all the pictures and all the daily routines, like eating breakfast and going to bed and playing and going to kindergarten. Everything was different. So it was very hard.
Anders and Lise decided to make their home in Thailand and set up a charity in Ragnar's name.
We are on our way to Khao Lak. We've been to Khao Lak many times. Khao Lak has been a natural place for us to go because that was the place where we were when the tsunami hit, and that's the place where we lost our son.
Ragnar's Care Foundation helps children whose lives were blighted by the tsunami.
She's told me just that she's painting the tsunami. I think, is this Panam Camp? I think so.
Some of the money was used to fund art projects in the refugee camps.
This project is based on art as a therapy for children to express their trauma and grief through art.
It's dramatic. You see here the wave is coming up and it's getting inland. It's above the palm tree, and that's just how I felt it too, because when you were in the wave you were just seeing the palm trees as grass, and this describes exactly what was happening that day. So it's a strong picture.
Almost 1 year since the tsunami, and Anders and Lise are still in Thailand. In the summer, they found their son's body.
Ragnar was found and identified on the 11th of July this summer. He was identified both by fingerprints and DNA.
They took Ragnar back to Norway to bury him.
More than 600 people turn up for Ragnar's funeral. Everyone attending, lighting a candle for his spirit. It was very beautiful. All the children were invited up to his coffin and stand around it and sing his favorite lullaby.
It was very important for us to find Ragnar and to have a funeral. And also the funeral we would like to have in Ragnar's spirit, because he was a very happy child, and this was maybe the last thing we could do for him.
Lisa and Anders are still helping families affected by the tsunami. Some of the money they've raised will be used to rebuild fishermen's boats.
The aim for Ragnar's Care Foundation is to help children directly or indirectly. And sometime while doing so, we have to help the parents in order to help the children. If the parents can come back into their old way of life, doing what they did before the tsunami, and it's also easier for them to take care of the children when they are back in their old business, supporting themselves and their families. By doing this, we are now able to give something back to the Thai people who were so good to us and helped us through a very difficult time. By doing this, we can also give some help back and provide for some of the children in a way that we now cannot for Ragnar.
It's been a year dominated by terrorism, with the London bombings in particular bringing the horrors closer to home. We reported on one victim of terror who gave an inspirational account of his personal battle to recover from an attack that ended with him riddled with bullets and left for dead. He works here, in the BBC newsroom. 18 months ago, the BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner almost died while on assignment in Saudi Arabia. Frank and his cameraman Simon Cumbers were there to report on attacks on British workers.
Security here does appear to be tight, and Saudi officials point out that so far Al-Qaeda has never managed to attack any sensitive oil installations.
On the 4th of June 2004, Frank and Simon were filming in a quiet suburb in Riyadh under supervision from the Saudi authorities.
I heard a shot and something stung my shoulder, but the adrenaline was pumping so much as I was running. It just stung. It's like a stinging nettle. It didn't really hurt. A bullet had passed clean through it. And I suppose for a few split seconds, I thought, I'm going to make it. I'm going to get away. And the next thing I knew, there were more shots, and I was flat on the deck. I was flat on the ground. And I'd been shot in the leg. They'd shattered my leg. And I looked up, and there were a number of militants there. And I pleaded with them in Arabic to spare me. They decided to execute me anyhow. And they then pumped bullets into me, into my midriff around here. I don't know if it was deliberate to miss my head. I don't know. I imagine that they, well, in fact, I know for certain because they left me for dead. They wanted to kill me. It was a targeted execution.
And you had how many bullets in you at this stage?
Well, one had gone through. I had 5, so I was shot 6 times. And I do remember thinking, this is weird. Surely, you die.
You should be dead by now.
I should be dead. You know, I was very surprised to find I was still alive.
This photograph was taken of Frank Gardner by a Saudi passerby, minutes after an attack that saw him shot a total of 6 times. By then, Simon Cumbers had already been murdered by a single bullet to the head. Frank was taken to hospital, and against all the odds, he survived.
After about 8 days, I sort of started to come round. And the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was my wife. And the first thing she said, "Honey, you made it. You're my hero. You survived. We get to spend the rest of our lives together. And that was just so thrilling to hear that.
But Frank had to deal with the fact that though all the bullets missed vital organs, one hit his spinal nerves, paralysing his legs. Back in the UK, he went through a gruelling schedule of rehabilitation at the National Orthopaedic Hospital in Stanmore in Middlesex.
It wasn't until about 6 months after my injuries that I realised just how difficult, near on impossible it's going to be for me to walk again. I mean, I am walking after a fashion now, but I think my dancing days are over. Mentally, it's very, very tough, because a lot of us here in the spinal injuries unit, at night we dream, as I did last night, that I'm able-bodied and running and jumping again. And then you wake up and you find that you're not, and you just wish that the dream was reality, and reality was the dream. But this journey that I've just done here has taken a long time, relatively, and I could have done this in a wheelchair in a fraction of the time. But I'm damn well going to walk with this for some of the time.
Just weeks after taking those first steps, Frank was back in the newsroom and back on our screens reporting on the war on terror.
Well, they had to move extremely quickly. As soon as they had the information as to where they were, they moved immediately. Normally they do a raid like this. I love doing this job, and fortunately, as my head isn't injured, I can still do it. I can't, of course, be jumping out of helicopters, but I've done some trips, like, for example, going to Geneva to interview one of Osama bin Laden's brothers. He's a good guy, the brother, you know, he's a legitimate businessman. There and back in the day, I was thinking pre-injury, I was thinking, oh, well, Geneva, that's a doddle, that's a day trip. Of course, for me, it was absolutely exhausting. And I've just been to the Middle East, I've just been back this month for the first time since getting shot there last year. And it was really good. I had an enormous warm welcome from the Arab media and from Arab friends. People were coming up to me saying, Mr. Frank, we are so sorry for what happened. Please don't hold it against us. And I don't.
Frank was awarded an OBE.
I'd never met the Queen before, but you know, when you're face to face with her, you think, oh, well, I know this person. You've seen them close up on TV so many times, and we chatted away for a couple of minutes, and then out shot the royal ham, which meant the interview was over, and off I tottered on my calipers, walking as I did for your programme 8 months ago. In calipers.
And Frank continues to get messages of support from viewers and listeners from across the world. And that's it for Real Story for this year. Remember, our most successful investigations start with you. So if you've got an issue you think we should take a look at, or you know more about a subject we've already covered, get in touch via our website, bbc.co.uk/realstory. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Real Story's back next year with a special programme about the people driven to undergo drastic and life-threatening surgery in their desperation to lose weight. That's at 9 o'clock on the 4th of January here on BBC One.